When the servant failed to appear, the Alpha King went in person and discovered the truth. Rivers glistened like silver snakes beneath the pale moon, and the wind carried whispers that seemed alive. It was a kingdom ruled by fear and respect, for its king, Kaelin, bore the title of the Alpha King. Not merely a ruler, he was a presence felt before he entered a room, a man whose steps commanded obedience and whose eyes pierced into the soul of any who dared to look away. Kaelin sat upon his throne, a grand seat carved from black obsidian and lined with frost-colored silk. The hall was empty save for the quiet rustle of tapestries and the occasional echo of footsteps in the distant corridors. He held a sealed letter in his hand, edges worn from constant handling. It was addressed to his most trusted servant, Taryn, who had been sent to a remote manor at the edge of the kingdom. Taryn was to retrieve a relic, one whispered to hold an ancient power. The manor, however, was cursed, or so the rumors said. It was a place where shadows seemed to breathe, and where the walls themselves remembered sorrow. Days had passed since Taryn departed, and word of his failure to return had reached Kaelin only this morning. The king's jaw tightened. Few dared to fail him, and fewer still did so without consequence. Yet this time, something stirred within him, a flicker of unease he rarely felt. He rose from the throne, the long cloak trailing behind him like a shadow. His advisors hesitated in the doorway, sensing the storm beneath his composed exterior. "Send others to search," one dared to say. Kaelin's gaze fell upon him, cold and sharp. "No," he said. His voice carried the weight of command and finality. "I will go myself." The court gasped. To venture to that cursed manor alone was unheard of, even for a king. But Kaelin's decision was made. He would not allow rumor or superstition to dictate his action. If Taryn were in danger, he would find him, and he would face whatever awaited within those walls. By nightfall, Kaelin rode north, his black stallion moving silently through the frost-touched forests. The wind tugged at his cloak, and the branches of ancient trees scratched at the sky like skeletal fingers. The journey was long, and even the night seemed alive with hidden eyes. Wolves howled in the distance, and owls glided silently above. The king felt a familiar tension knot within him, an edge of anticipation sharpened by the unknown. As the manor came into view, Kaelin's eyes narrowed. It sat atop a rocky hill, half hidden by mist, its towers jagged like broken teeth. The walls were dark, and the windows reflected the moonlight like watchful eyes. The air around the manor felt heavier, as though it carried the sorrow and anger of centuries. Kaelin dismounted and approached the manor on foot. Every step seemed to echo through the empty hallways within. The main doors stood slightly ajar, creaking with each gust of wind. He pushed them open, and the sound resonated like a whisper through the stone corridors. Inside, the manor was cold and silent. Dust covered the furniture, and cobwebs hung like curtains in the corners. The air smelled of damp wood and something older, something that belonged to memories long forgotten. Kaelin moved cautiously, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, though he felt no threat from what could be seen. The danger here was subtle, hiding in the shadows and in the silence. He found Taryn's quarters empty. The bed was neatly made, as if no one had ever slept there. Drawers were closed, and the only signs of life were a single candle burning on the table and a faint trace of a scent Kaelin could not name. He knelt and inhaled gently. The fragrance was soft, sweet, almost like smoke curling through honey. It was not Taryn's. The king rose, eyes scanning the room. A sudden movement caught his attention, a flicker of shadow at the edge of his vision. He turned sharply, but nothing was there. The candle flickered, sending the room into moments of darkness and light. Then a whisper floated through the air, barely audible. "Kaelin." The voice was soft, melodic, tinged with sorrow. It was human, yet not entirely so, as if it came from a place between worlds. Kaelin's hand tightened on his sword, but he did not draw it. Instead he spoke, his voice calm yet commanding. "Show yourself, I am no enemy." The whisper came again, closer now, echoing off the walls. "You should not have come." Kalen's heart, which rarely betrayed him, beat faster. The whisper carried a warning but also a pull, a strange magnetism that stirred a curiosity he could not deny. He moved deeper into the manor, the corridors twisting like a maze. Portraits of long-dead nobles lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow his progress. Some were faded, some so lifelike they might have been painted yesterday. He felt the weight of their gazes, a mixture of judgment and sadness, pressing against him. The flickering candle led him to a grand hall. Moonlight poured through a broken window, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny stars. At the center of the hall was a figure, half hidden by shadow, sitting on a chair that had long since decayed. The figure rose as Kalen approached, movements graceful and measured. She was tall, with hair that fell like a river of midnight, and eyes that held the sorrow of 1,000 lifetimes. Her presence was both beautiful and unsettling. Kalen felt a strange tension coil in his chest, a mixture of fascination and caution. "I am Kalen," he said steadily. "I seek my servant Taran. Have you seen him?" The figure's lips curved faintly, almost a smile, but it did not reach her eyes. "Taran," she echoed, voice soft as wind through dead leaves. "He came, but he did not stay." Kalen frowned, studying her. "What do you mean?" Her gaze fell, and for a moment her shoulders sagged with invisible weight. "This place, it is not kind. It does not let go. Those who enter often remain in shadow even when they leave. Taran, he is part of it now." Kalen's chest tightened. "Then I will bring him back. Whatever is in this manor, I will face it." She looked up sharply, eyes blazing, and a sudden chill filled the room. "You should not have come here, King," she said. "Not alone, not like this. You cannot fight what lingers in these walls." Kalen stepped closer, voice low but unwavering. "I am not afraid. If you wish to test me, I will not falter." For a long moment they stood in silence. The candle between them flickered violently, casting the room into darkness, then light again. Kalen could feel the tension in the air, a living thing that pressed against his skin. Then she moved, gliding across the floor with a grace that seemed almost unnatural, and disappeared into the shadows. Kalen's heart raced. He moved forward, following the faint trail of her presence. The manor seemed to shift around him. Corridors that had been straight now twisted, doors that had been closed now opened. Whispers surrounded him, soft murmurs, fleeting cries, laughter that turned into sobs. Yet Kalen did not waver. He was the Alpha King, and he would not be turned away by fear. Eventually, he reached a room at the very heart of the manor. It was circular, walls lined with mirrors that reflected not only his image but something darker behind it. He could see fleeting shapes moving within the glass, shadows of memories long forgotten. And there in the center of the room the figure waited. She looked at him steadily, her eyes a mixture of challenge and warning. "Kalen, the manor tests all who enter. You may find Taran, or you may find yourself lost to the shadows." Kalen's jaw set. "Then I will not leave until I know the truth. Where is my servant?" She did not answer immediately. Instead, she extended a hand, as if offering both invitation and threat. The candle between them flickered once more, casting long, dancing shadows across the room. And then she spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "Follow me, but beware. The truth you seek is not what you hope for." Kalen swallowed hard. He knew that whatever lay ahead would challenge him, not only as a king but as a man. The shadows around him seemed to pulse, alive with secrets and sorrow. Yet he stepped forward, hands steady, heart determined. For Taran, for the kingdom, for the duty that bound him above all else. The candle flickered one last time before the darkness swallowed the room completely, and Kalen felt the first true weight of the manor pressing against him. Somewhere, deep within the shadows, a whisper followed him. "Kalen, do you know what you have become?" And for the first time, the Alpha King wondered if even he could survive the truth. The shadows of the manor seemed to breathe. twisting and stretching as Kalen followed the mysterious figure through corridors that defied logic. Every step echoed softly, though the vast hallways should have swallowed sound. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood, old stone, and a faint trace of something sweeter, something alive, yet not entirely human. Kalen's hand rested lightly on the hilt of his sword, though he knew that steel alone could not face what awaited him. The figure before him moved with a grace that seemed impossible, her footsteps silent, yet her presence commanding every corner of the space. She finally stopped at a door carved with symbols that glowed faintly in the candlelight. She turned, her eyes meeting Kalen's with a mixture of warning and defiance. "Beyond this door lies what you seek," she said, voice low and musical, yet carrying a hint of sorrow. "But beware, the manor does not yield truth lightly. It tests the heart before the eyes." Kalen nodded, the weight of his determination steady in his chest. "I am no ordinary traveler," he said. "I am the Alpha King. I do not shy from tests." Her lips curved faintly, almost a smile, and then she moved aside. Kalen stepped forward, crossing the threshold into a vast chamber. The walls were lined with mirrors, each reflecting a different version of the room and of him. In some he appeared older, wearier, a king burdened beyond endurance. In others he saw himself faltering, shadows creeping from the corners of his eyes. A sudden chill swept the chamber. From the far side a figure emerged, stepping from behind a curtain of shadows. She was taller than any woman Kalen had seen, with hair as black as a raven's wing and eyes that glowed faintly with an inner light. Her skin was pale, almost ethereal, and she moved with a fluidity that made her seem as if she were part of the shadows themselves. "Who are you?" Kalen asked, his voice steady despite the shiver running down his spine. "I am Leora," she said softly, though the timbre of her voice carried an unspoken power. "I live here, yet I do not. The manor keeps me, binds me. I am part of its sorrow, and it is part of mine." Kalen studied her carefully. "You know what happened to Taryn?" Leora's gaze flickered, eyes darkening. "He came seeking what should not be taken. The manor has claimed him as it claims all who trespass. Yet he is not lost entirely, not yet." Kalen took a step closer, tension coiling in his chest. "Then I will bring him back. Whatever curse lingers here, I will face it." Leora tilted her head, studying him as though weighing the truth of his words. "You are brave," she said finally, "or foolish, perhaps both. Many kings have entered these walls seeking what they cannot see. Few leave unchanged." Kalen's jaw set. "I am not like the others. I will not fail." For a long moment she remained silent. Then with a swift motion she raised her hand, and the mirrors lining the room shimmered. The reflections began to move independently, showing fleeting images of fear and sorrow, triumph and loss. Kalen watched as the mirrors displayed Taryn, trapped within a swirling shadow, reaching for something just beyond his grasp. "This is what binds him," Leora said, voice trembling slightly. "He is caught between worlds, between shadow and light, between life and what remains." Kalen's fists clenched. He had faced enemies in battle, storms that had ripped ships from harbors and treacherous rivals who sought his throne. But this was different. The enemy was unseen, fluid, alive in ways he could not predict. "Then show me the way," he said. "Guide me, tell me what I must do." Leora's eyes softened briefly, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through her guarded exterior. "You may not like the truth you find," she said. "The manor reveals not only what is lost, but also what the heart hides. You may see things you cannot unsee." Kalen nodded. "I am ready." She extended her hand, and a thin ribbon of shadow stretched from her palm, winding through the air and touching his chest lightly. Kalen felt a pulse, not painful but deep, like a heartbeat shared between two worlds. The manor groaned, the walls bending as though the building itself had acknowledged his resolve. The mirrors rippled, showing visions that made Kalen catch his breath. He saw Taryn, struggling against unseen bonds, his face pale but determined. He saw shadows that whispered, twisting like smoke around him. And he saw Leora, not as she stood now, but as she might have been, free and radiant, yet carrying a grief so deep that it had shaped her very being. "You see," Leora whispered, "the curse is older than you imagine. It does not merely bind the body. It feeds on sorrow, on fear, on regrets too heavy to bear." Kalen's hands clenched at his sides. "Then we face it together," he said, voice firm. "I do not care how powerful it is. We will bring Taryn back. We will break this." Leora studied him for a long moment. Finally she nodded. "Very well, but know this. The manor does not forgive easily. Every step you take may cost you more than you imagine." Together they moved deeper into the chamber. Shadows shifted around them, forming shapes that whispered secrets, taunting and testing their resolve. Kalen felt the weight of every glance, every echo pressing on him, yet he walked steadily, refusing to show fear. Suddenly, the shadow of a doorway appeared in the far wall, and Kalen saw a figure standing there, human in shape, yet distorted by shadow. Taryn. His servant's eyes widened as he recognized Kalen, hope and fear battling in his expression. "Taryn," Kalen called, his voice echoing across the chamber. "I am here. You are not alone." Taryn's lips moved, but no sound emerged. The shadows around him thickened, forming tendrils that sought to pull him back. Kalen stepped forward, drawing his sword. The steel glinted in the faint light, though he knew that might alone could not free Taryn. "Focus!" Leora shouted, her voice ringing clear amid the whispers. "He will not move unless you reach him with more than force." Kalen hesitated, understanding the truth in her words. Power alone could not break this spell. He had to reach Taryn with his will, his heart, his determination. He closed his eyes briefly, picturing the servant's face, imagining his hands free of the shadows. Then he spoke, voice low but steady. "Taryn, reach for me. Trust me." "You are not lost." The shadows wavered. Taryn's hands moved, trembling, reaching toward Kalen. The room shivered as if the manor itself resisted, but Kalen's will held firm. Inch by inch, Taryn emerged from the darkness until finally Kalen grasped his arms and pulled him into the light. Taryn collapsed against him, gasping, weak but alive. Kalen held him firmly, relief washing through him. "You are safe now," he said. "I will not leave you here." Leora stepped closer, watching quietly. "You have succeeded," she said softly, "but the manor does not release its prisoners entirely. You have won a battle, but the war is not over." Kalen nodded, understanding the truth behind her words. The manor had tested him, challenged him, and he had prevailed for now. But the shadows lingered and the echo of its sorrow remained. Taryn's eyes met Kalen's, gratitude and fear mingling in his gaze. "Thank you, my king," he whispered, voice trembling. I thought I would be lost forever." "You are not lost," Kalen replied. "Not while I draw breath." Leora's gaze lingered on Kalen, eyes unreadable. For the first time there was a flicker of something like admiration, or perhaps something more complex, something unspoken that pulled at Kalen in a way he had never felt. "The manor has not finished with you yet," she said, voice low and warning. "Its shadows are patient. They wait for those who think they are free." Kalen's jaw set. "Then we will be ready." As they left the chamber, the corridors seemed less oppressive, though the air remained heavy with ancient sorrow. Kalen helped Taryn along, while Leora moved silently beside them. The night outside was cold, the wind sharper now, as though acknowledging the battle fought within the manor. For a moment, Kalen allowed himself a thought he rarely entertained. The mysterious inhabitant, Leora, had been both guide and guardian, yet her presence stirred something unfamiliar in him. A longing, a curiosity, a need to understand her as he had not sought to understand anyone in decades. But there was no time to dwell on that. The manor still held its secrets, and Kalen knew that their journey had only begun. The shadows would not rest, and neither would he. At the threshold of the main hall, Leora paused, looking back over her shoulder. "Remember," she said softly, "the manor shows you what you fear most. Do not let it claim your heart." Kaelin met her gaze, silent, but in that silence was a promise. He would not falter, he would not break. And he would see the truth through, no matter how dark or difficult it became. As they stepped into the moonlit night, the wind carried a whisper, soft as a memory. This is only the beginning. Kaelin's grip on Taryn's shoulder tightened. Whatever trials lay ahead, he would face them. The Alpha King did not back down, not from shadows, not from curses, and not from the truth. The moon hung low over the northern lands, casting pale silver light across the jagged cliffs surrounding the manor. Kaelin rode slowly back from the heart of the shadowed halls, Taryn walking beside him, still shaken but determined to stay upright. The wind tugged at his cloak, carrying the scent of frost and pine, but beneath it lingered another presence, soft, elusive, watching him from the manor's windows. Leora remained beside them, her form almost blending with the darkness. Kaelin could sense her power, restrained yet vast, like a storm contained behind glass. He had spoken little during their exit, for words seemed insufficient against the tension that clung to the air. Yet with each step, he felt the pull of something unspoken between them. Curiosity, caution, and perhaps something deeper, a longing neither dared name. The northern wind whipped sharply as Kaelin guided Taryn toward a small clearing near the edge of the cliffs. The moonlight shimmered on the frozen grass, and the silence was absolute, except for the occasional whisper of shadows brushing the rocks. "Taryn," Kaelin said quietly, his voice low but steady, "rest here. You need warmth and sleep. Tomorrow we leave this place." Taryn nodded, teeth chattering slightly. "Yes, my king, thank you for not leaving me behind." Kaelin offered a brief, almost imperceptible nod. "You are my responsibility. That does not change." Leora lingered nearby, watching the exchange with a faint frown. "The manor does not release its bonds so easily," she murmured. "Even if you think he is free, the shadows still cling to him. They will follow, testing him, testing you." Kaelin's gaze drifted toward her. "Then we will be ready. Whatever follows, we face it together." For a moment, Leora's eyes met his, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of shared burden, of understanding that both had been shaped by loss and sorrow. But she turned quickly, hiding whatever flicker of emotion had crossed her face, and led the way back toward the manor. The night grew colder as they approached the outer courtyard, the shadows stretching long and thin, moving almost as if they had a will of their own. The moonlight revealed the manor in stark contrast to the night, its towers jagged, its windows reflecting nothing but darkness. Kaelin stepped carefully, hand resting on the hilt of his sword, though he knew the weapon alone would not shield him from what waited inside. Leora paused at the threshold, turning to face him. "You have shown courage," she said softly, "but courage alone is not enough here. The manor tests the heart, not the sword. You must be ready to face what you fear most." Kaelin's jaw set. "I have faced kings, armies, storms, and treachery. I will face what lies within these walls." She gave a faint nod, then stepped aside, allowing him entry. The air inside was thick, heavy with old sorrow and whispered memories. The corridors seemed alive, stretching and twisting as they moved deeper, reflecting not only their physical forms but their thoughts and fears. At the heart of the manor, the mirrors shimmered again, reflecting visions that seemed almost alive. Kaelin felt his pulse quicken as he saw fleeting images of Taryn struggling against unseen bonds, and of Leora, not as she appeared now, but as someone caught in endless sorrow, her eyes haunted by centuries of regret. Kaelin took a deep breath. "Show me the way," he said to Leora. "Tell me what I must do to break this curse fully." Leora's gaze softened, her voice trembling slightly. "The manor responds not only to strength but to understanding. It feeds on fear, on hesitation, on doubt. You must trust yourself in him and also trust me." Kaelin's eyes met hers. "I will trust where it is necessary, but know this: Taryn will be freed, nothing else matters." Together they moved through the hall of mirrors. Shadows shifted and whispered, forming shapes that mocked, tested, and tempted them. Some mirrors reflected Kaelin's past, moments of failure and regret he had long buried. Others reflected the future, visions of loss that chilled him to the bone. And through it all, Taran remained trapped in a reflection of shadow, reaching toward him with silent desperation. Kaelin's heart ached, but he did not falter. "I am here," he said firmly, his voice steady amid the chaos. "Reach for me, Taran. You are not alone." The shadows convulsed, swirling around Taran, and a sudden wave of cold struck Kaelin, knocking him to one knee. Yet he gritted his teeth and rose again, refusing to let the darkness claim him. Leora stepped closer, placing her hand lightly on his shoulder. "Focus," she whispered. "The manor feeds on fear. Use your will, not just your strength." Kaelin nodded, closing his eyes for a moment. He thought of Taran's face, of the servant's loyalty and courage, and of the bond they shared. He reached with his mind, his heart, extending a force of will and care toward Taran. Slowly, the shadows wavered. Taran's hands moved, trembling, reaching toward Kaelin. Inch by inch, the bonds loosened, until Kaelin could grasp him firmly and pull him into the light. Taran collapsed against him, shivering yet alive. "You did it," Taran whispered, voice trembling. I thought I would be lost forever." "You are not lost," Kaelin replied, pressing a reassuring hand to Taran's back. "Not while I draw breath." Leora watched silently, her expression unreadable. "You have succeeded in this challenge," she said softly, "but the manor is patient. It does not release its prisoners completely. The shadows linger, waiting for the weak or the unprepared." Kaelin's gaze met hers, steady and unwavering. "Then we will be ready. Whatever comes, we face it together." For a moment, the room was silent save for the faint rustle of shadows retreating into the corners. Kaelin noticed the subtle shift in Leora's demeanor. Her eyes lingered on him, a mixture of admiration and something deeper, something unspoken. He felt the pull of her presence, the tension between them growing heavier with each passing moment. The manor, however, was not finished with its test. As they moved toward the exit, a low rumble filled the halls. The mirrors flickered violently, and the shadows around them began to swirl more aggressively. Kaelin instinctively stepped in front of Taran, drawing his sword, though he knew it was unlikely to strike a shadow that could shift like smoke. The figure of Leora moved gracefully between them and the encroaching darkness. "Stay close," she instructed. "The manor will test your hearts now, not just your courage." Suddenly, a shadow surged forward, forming a shape that resembled Kaelin's own reflection, but twisted, dark, and cruel. It lunged at him with an eerie precision. Kaelin's hand went instinctively to the sword, but the shadow recoiled from the steel, feeding instead on his fear and doubt. "You are stronger than you think," Leora said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "Do not let it feed on what you doubt. Remember why you are here. Remember who you protect." Kaelin's breath steadied. He focused, pushing aside fear and uncertainty, drawing on his resolve and care for Taran. The shadow faltered, then recoiled into the mirror, unable to sustain itself against his unwavering will. Taran, sensing the shift, found courage in Kaelin's strength. "I am not afraid," he said softly, standing tall despite his exhaustion. The shadows around him shivered, weakening as he spoke. Kaelin smiled faintly, a rare warmth in his expression. "Good, hold to that." With a final effort, Leora extended her hand, and a ribbon of light intertwined with the shadows, guiding them back into the mirrors. The room fell silent once more, the oppressive weight lifting slightly. Kaelin exhaled, relief mixing with exhaustion. "It is not over," he said, voice low but firm. "But we have survived this test." Leora's gaze met his, and for the first time there was a softness, almost a vulnerability. "You are not like the others," she murmured. "Most who enter here would have turned back or succumbed to fear. You endure." Kaelin felt a strange stir in his chest. He had faced many battles, many enemies, yet there was something about Leora, about the way she moved, the way she spoke, the way her presence pulled at him, that unsettled him more than any army ever had. But there was no time to dwell on this. The manor still held secrets, and Kalen knew that their journey was far from over. The shadows would not rest, and neither would he. As they stepped toward the exit, the moonlight spilling across the frozen ground, Leora's voice cut through the silence. Kalen, the manor tests more than strength. It tests the heart. Do not let it claim yours. Kalen met her gaze, steady and unwavering. I will not falter, not for shadows, not for curses, not for anything. A faint smile touched Leora's lips, though it did not reach her eyes completely. Then perhaps you are the first who may truly face it. The wind swirled around them, carrying whispers that hinted of trials yet to come. Kalen's grip on Taryn tightened. Whatever lay ahead, he knew he would face it. The Alpha King did not back down, not from shadows, not from curses, and not from the truth. And somewhere deep within the manor, unseen eyes watched, waiting, as if acknowledging that the true test had only just begun. The northern sky glowed faintly as dawn approached, though the manor still loomed dark and silent, its towers jagged against the pale light. Kalen stood at the edge of the courtyard, Taryn behind him, still recovering from the manor's trials. Leora moved silently at his side, her presence steady, powerful, yet fragile, like a candle against the wind. The air was heavy with anticipation, as if the manor itself waited for the final confrontation. Shadows twisted along the walls, moving with purpose, feeding on the lingering fears that clung to every heart within. Kalen's jaw was set, his eyes scanning the darkness. This was no ordinary trial. This was the ultimate test of courage, of heart, and of trust. Are you ready? Leora asked softly, her voice carrying both warning and encouragement. Kalen nodded. I am ready. Whatever waits, I face it. The trio stepped deeper into the manor, moving toward the central tower where the curse's origin pulsed like a dark heartbeat. The halls seemed to stretch endlessly, shadows forming shapes that mocked them, visions of failure, of doubt, of loss. Taryn clutched Kalen's cloak, eyes wide with fear, yet he followed without hesitation. Kalen felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier than ever. He could not falter. At the top of the tower, they entered a circular chamber, walls lined with ancient runes that glowed faintly in shades of blue and violet. At its center hovered a dark figure, tall and cloaked in shadow, its presence both terrifying and majestic. Eyes glowed faintly beneath the hood, watching them with a sorrowful hunger. You have come, the figure said, voice echoing like wind through empty halls. Few have the courage to reach this place, but courage alone is not enough. Kalen stepped forward, sword in hand but steady at his side. We are not here to fight you with weapons, he said. We are here to end this curse. Taryn is freed, but the manor's shadow lingers. We will not allow it to harm anyone else. The figure tilted its head, a gesture both curious and sad. The manor's shadow does not harm without reason. It binds, it tests, it mirrors the hearts of those who enter. You claim to be ready, but are you willing to face the truth of yourself? Kalen's gaze did not waver. I face whatever is necessary. I will not falter for fear. The shadows surged, and suddenly the chamber filled with visions. Kalen saw himself not as king, but as a boy, alone and afraid, abandoned in a cold forest. He saw Taryn, terrified and pleading, and Leora, trapped in endless sorrow. He saw his own failures, the moments when his pride had blinded him, the lives lost under his command. And within all of it, the shadowed figure waited, patient and unyielding. Kalen clenched his fists, resisting the pull of fear. I will not let these shadows define me, he said firmly. I have made mistakes, but I will protect those I care for. I will face the darkness, and I will endure. The shadow figure tilted its head again, almost as if studying him. You speak well, Alpha King, but words alone will not break the curse. The bond must be unbroken by action, by trust, and by heart. Only through unity can the shadow be freed. Kalen looked at Leora. Her hand hovered near his, hesitant but steady. He understood without words. She had faced this curse for centuries, and now, for the first time, she allowed herself to share her strength with him. Together, they would confront it. The shadow figure raised its arms, and the chamber trembled. Tendrils of darkness stretched toward them, moving like serpents in the air. Taran froze, fear gripping him, but Kaelin stepped forward, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "Trust me," Kaelin said firmly. "We face this together." Leora nodded, her hand brushing his briefly. The contact was electric, yet calm, an unspoken bond that strengthened them. Together they reached for the darkness, their combined will forming a light that pushed against the shadows. The tendrils recoiled, hissing like wind through dead leaves. The chamber shivered, and the runes on the walls blazed brightly, casting reflections that danced like fire across their faces. The shadow figure cried out, not in pain but in sorrow, a sound that shook Kaelin's heart. "You cannot undo what was done," the figure said, voice trembling. "The sorrow is eternal." Kaelin's eyes burned with determination. "We do not seek to erase history. We seek to free those trapped, to break the chains of fear and suffering. That is what we can do, and we will." He reached further, focusing on Taran's presence, on Leora's strength, and on his own resolve. Light pulsed from their hands, coalescing into a brilliant sphere that cut through the darkness. Shadows shrieked and twisted, unable to resist the combined force of courage, trust, and heart. For a moment everything seemed suspended. The manor itself held its breath. Then slowly the darkness began to dissipate, unraveling like smoke in the wind. The shadow figure's form wavered, softening into a figure both human and ethereal, its sorrow melting away as light filled the chamber. Leora's eyes shone with relief. Taran stepped forward, shaking but smiling, free at last. Kaelin lowered his hands, exhaustion and triumph washing over him in equal measure. "You did it," Taran whispered, voice filled with awe and gratitude. "The curse, it's gone." Kaelin nodded, placing a hand on Taran's shoulder. "You are free, that is what matters." The shadow figure, now more luminous and gentle, regarded Kaelin and Leora. "You have proven that even in darkness, courage and heart can prevail. The manor is at peace for now. But remember, light always casts a shadow, and the world will test you again. Take what you have learned and carry it forward." Kaelin bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he rarely offered to any being. "We understand, and we will remember." The figure faded slowly, leaving behind a calm silence. The oppressive weight of the manor lifted, replaced by a sense of stillness and hope. Kaelin looked around, noticing for the first time the beauty of the manor, the intricate carvings, the soft glimmer of frost on the windows, the quiet hum of life returning to the halls. Leora moved closer, her presence warm and steady. "The curse is broken," she said softly, "and yet we have changed. You have faced the shadows within yourself as I have faced mine. We are not the same as before." Kaelin nodded, his eyes meeting hers. "We are stronger. We are not defined by the darkness, but by what we chose to do in its presence. And I am grateful you were with me." For the first time, Leora allowed herself a small smile, a flicker of vulnerability that did not weaken her. "And I am grateful you did not turn away." The wind from the northern cliffs swept into the chamber, carrying the scent of pine and frost. Kaelin felt a shift within himself, a quiet, steady confidence born of trials faced and fears overcome. He glanced at Taran, who stood beside him, and knew that the bond they shared had deepened, strengthened by their shared ordeal. Yet Kaelin's gaze lingered on Leora. There was a tension between them, unspoken yet undeniable, a connection forged in the heat of danger, in the face of despair, and in the triumph over shadows. He realized that the manor had not only tested their courage, it had tested their hearts. Leora stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Kaelin, there is more to you than I expected, more than I have seen in centuries. You care, not just as a king, but as a man." Kaelin met her eyes, the storm of emotion inside him mirrored in her gaze. "And you are more than the shadow that binds you. You are strength and wisdom and courage. I have never met anyone like you." For a moment, silence held them, broken only by the distant call of birds heralding the coming day. The bond between them had shifted, a subtle understanding and respect deepening into something neither fully named, yet both felt. Taryn broke the moment with a soft laugh, shaking his head. "King, I think the manor has had enough of tests for one lifetime. Let us return home." Kalen chuckled softly, placing a hand on Taryn's shoulder. "Yes, it is time." As they descended the tower, the first rays of sunlight painted the northern sky in hues of gold and crimson. The manor, once a place of fear and sorrow, now seemed quiet, almost serene. Shadows still lingered in corners, but they were harmless, softened by the light and by the courage of those who had faced them. Kalen stepped outside, feeling the crisp morning air fill his lungs. Taryn followed, smiling despite exhaustion, and Leora lingered a moment, watching him with an expression that held gratitude, respect, and something deeper. "Kalen," she said softly, "this is not the end. Shadows will always exist. But you have proven that even in darkness, light can prevail. Remember this." Kalen nodded. "I will, and I will remember you." A quiet breeze swept across the cliffs, rustling Leora's hair. She gave a small nod and without another word turned back toward the manor. Kalen watched her go, feeling the stirrings of something new within him, a hope, a curiosity, and perhaps a promise of connection that had begun in the heart of shadows. He looked at Taryn, whose eyes reflected admiration and relief. "Come," Kalen said, "the kingdom awaits, and we have much to rebuild." As they rode back toward the northern capital, the sun fully rose, spilling warmth and light over the frozen lands. Kalen felt the weight of responsibility, yes, but also the thrill of survival, of courage, and of hearts tested and found steadfast. The Alpha King had faced the shadows, confronted the curse, and discovered not only the truth of the manor but the truth within himself. And somewhere beyond the distant mountains, Leora watched the horizon, a soft smile on her lips. She had been freed, yet she had also found something she had long forgotten, the possibility of trust, of courage shared, and of hearts intertwined. Kalen and Leora's paths had crossed in shadow, tested by curses and trials, and though the darkness remained in the world, they had emerged transformed. Their story, forged in the crucible of fear and sorrow, had become one of strength, understanding, and hope. The manor stood behind them, silent, patient, yet powerless now against the courage and heart of those who had faced it. And as Kalen rode toward the rising sun, he knew one thing with certainty. The true measure of power was not in fear or dominance, but in courage, compassion, and the willingness to face the shadows, no matter how deep they ran. The Alpha King, the servant he had sworn to protect, and the woman who had walked with him through shadow and sorrow, moved forward together, bound not only by duty, but by the understanding that even in the darkest places, hearts could find light. The wind carried the faintest whisper of the manor behind them, almost a sigh of surrender. And Kalen, riding into the new day, felt the stirrings of hope, of courage renewed, and of a future where shadows could no longer define the hearts of those who dared to face them.